This is all the result of a coffee morning with a friend when they brought out a lovely slab of cake on this cute little serving board. And as soon as I saw it, I thought I'd like one of those for myself. It looked the perfect size, perfect shape, absolutely ideal as a little tiny little serving board, or maybe a real small chopping board, fruits, herbs, garlic, that sort of thing. I grabbed a couple of bits of paper out of their printer and draw the outline of it, which I've got here. I'll put that up on the screen for you. So you can see it's just a tiny little thing. It is 360mm long, 160mm wide, and 15mm thick. Approximately, I was using one of their seamstress tape measure bendy flexi things. But I also got to thinking, well, if it's got that much instant appeal to me, surely other people are going to think the same thing as well, and maybe want to part with some of their cash for it. So this video is going to focus on whether I could make said board efficiently enough to enable me to make a profit on it and sell it at craft fairs. So I went hunting in the woodshed to see what I had that I could use, and I found this slab of beech. So I set about working out which was the best way, the most effective way to cut it down into usable panels that I could then cut the chopping board shape out of, the serving board shape out of. And I considered slicing it so that I ended up with one solid panel, and that piece would have yielded 8 boards out of it that way. But if I did it that way, the thought occurred to me that there's such a cup in the piece now that may well transfer into each individual piece, and I'll end up with useless cupped pieces of timber. And also, if I decide to embellish on the design, make it a bit fancy, different coloured handle, that sort of thing, then that doesn't really give me that ability, doesn't work well with that. So I've gone down the route of cutting it up and making smaller boards, which is arguably a slightly longer process, maybe, don't really know. Didn't do it the other way, as I said, so didn't get to time it. But I did time it, making that piece into this. So the steps that I went through to get from a solid piece of timber to that was initially slice it down on the bandsaw to reduce the cup. That took a minute. And then planed the 2 pieces, 7 minutes, thicknessed them, 5 3/4 minutes, sawed them all down into the individual strips at 17mm thick on the table saw. That took quite a while, actually. That was a surprise. That was 19 minutes. The glue up took 21 minutes because before I could glue them, I had to joint some of them to get a decent join. So as I said, the glue up was 21 minutes. Unclamping, removing glue slots, 4 minutes, and then planing these pieces to the state that they're in now. So flat, square, planed all round, 7 minutes. So the total of all that was 55 minutes and 19 seconds to get to pieces that are usable, ready for me to start cutting the chopping boards out of. 55 minutes, 19 seconds. So I'm doing all right so far, and I haven't rushed myself stupid. I haven't killed myself doing it, but I tried to be as efficient as possible. Now I've got to say that 55 minutes does not include cleaning up the workshop or setting up the tool per se. So you could argue that there's a bit more time to add to that. So my first job is to try not to make a pig's ear of cutting out this template. Because although my friend wouldn't mind, I'd rather not have to go back and draw another one. So now that I've cut that in half, I've realised that I've made a mistake already. And that mistake is I got no hope of getting those 2 sides symmetrical. So what I'm going to do is cut that in half and choose the better half, and then I'll cut the template out based on the better half, and then I'll use that template to make the other side, glue them together, and that will then give me a symmetrical template. So there's my template. Needs a little clean up with a sander just to flatten it top and bottom, but essentially we're there. So now I need to decide which way I'm going to use the template. And two ideas spring to mind. One on the router table and two with an overhead router. Now on the router table would be pretty simple. All I'd need to do, bit of tape, bit of super glue, glue that piece to that, and then follow the curve, follow the profile of the template, sorry. However, if I use the router table, then I need to prepare the workpiece first, in as much as I'd need to remove as much of the waste as possible with the bandsaw in order to give the template bit a fair chance of following that template without tearing out and without burning. And there's going to be quite a bit of time involved in that. Plus the tear out aspect, going around this bit, there's a chance of tear out, there's a chance of tear out. And I'm thinking this way could be better. So by this way, I found an old template that I used to use for cutting handles in the end of chopping boards. But I've already got the match fit jig router slots in it. So I'm thinking, if I cut some extra MDF to go around the top to help balance, because once I get up there, I've got a real greater chance of tipping off and then gouging into the workpiece. So if I cut something over here that will help to support the router, then with these match fit clamps, I haven't got to bother with any tape, I haven't got to bother with any super glue or any clean up afterwards. And I can use a straight cut router bit to cut off these bits and avoid having to go near the bandsaw. So let's give this a try and see whether it's the better of the two options. So this didn't go as planned. Number one, these handles on the micro jig clamps really get in the way, and navigating the rotor in around them is just a bit too much of a faff. It's too fiddly and you lose focus on what you're doing. And that's proved by the fact that I've caught the outside, the waste material of the workpiece, which has caused it to fling the rotor aside, and I've moved the template. I'm not sure whether I can save this piece or not. Maybe I can put that on the router table and get it to follow that line, but I'm kind of knackered over here. So we'll set this piece to one side and see if we can come up with a better approach. So I think I'm back on track again now. This is actually version 3. Version 2 was a little embarrassing because I made exactly the same mistake again. But version 3 I think is a goer. I've had to revert to using some leftover flooring because my MDF is buried out the back and I can't get to it for a sec. But this works an absolute treat. So I've glued 2 bits together. I've made it longer so I can keep those clamps further to the back. And I've put a little backstop on it. And I've also put a center line there so I can line this up perfectly. I've had to revert to using a couple of screws to keep these 2 leaves down. And these 2 bits I've screwed in place. And that center mark also helps me line up the workpiece in the jig. So we take our workpiece, pop it in and line up that middle join with the middle line there. I'll just locate these 2 screws and then 2 clamps there, and then the 1 center clamp to keep the template down on top of the workpiece. Then I drop the template on and just eyeball this cross line that I've got, and that ensures that I've got enough room around here. And then a clamp at the top, clamp at the top, and then a clamp on the workpiece itself. This version 3 allows the router to flow all the way around there without having to navigate in between these 2. The only thing I really don't like is the fact that this sticks up in the way and having to use screws because they're not going to last forever. So I'm going to call this a temporary jig, and I need to come up with something a little better even now. But I'll save that for another video. So for now, let's cut this piece. So that's come out very nearly perfect. There's a couple of little bits that I'm going to need to take the sander to, but I think it'll literally be seconds. Really happy with that. So I'll cut the rest and I'll see you therein after. I've got some little marks, little divots where I've tipped a little bit with the router that I'm going to have to take out with the spindle sander or the belt sander. In the main, they're all pretty good, so I'm really quite happy. Although the jig could have been better, but as mentioned, I'll save that for another video. So I'll sand the edges and the faces of these, and then it'll be round over top and bottom, branding and oil and wax. So I'll put all the times for the individual steps up on the screen here somewhere so you can see them. But essentially 233 minutes for 9 boards, which equates to about 25 minutes per board. Let's say half an hour a board. Timber cost per board is about £2 based on the amount of money I paid for that half a cubic metre of beech that I started with. I'm hoping to be able to sell these for about £20 each. Less the £2, £18 per half an hour, £36 an hour. Yeah, I don't think that's too bad. I'm quite happy with that if I manage to sell them for the £20. But there's a bit of wiggle room there, which still says to me they're worthwhile. Even if I mark them down and use them as not quite a loss leader, but you get my meaning, to bring people in an inexpensive something to catch their eye, and then get them to look at the more expensive items that I'll have on my stands at the time at the craft fairs, then yeah, doubly worth it. So that's one of the reasons that I've not included the time in to make the jig up. One, because I made such a pig's ear of the first 2 versions, so it took quite a bit of time to make the jig, but I fully intend to do 2, 3, maybe 4 more batches of these ready for the 2 big craft fairs we're doing later on in the year. So it'd be unfair to apportion all of that time to this wee batch. I think throughout the process there are still some efficiencies to be had. If I really set my mind to it and went for it with a little bit more efficiency and drive, then I think I could drive the time down per board even more. But it was not an unenjoyable process making this 9, so I'm really quite happy with that. So I'll come back to you in another video with a new improved jig, hopefully, if I manage to make one, and also with some improvements to the design, some little ideas I've got that I think could take it to another level and allow you to charge a little bit more if you decide to make them yourself. So thanks very much for watching. I hope you enjoyed the video. If you did, give us a good thumbs up. If you loved it, hit the subscribe button. And if you're totally blown away by it, then why not check out my Patreon site. Thanks so much for watching and see you next time. Ta-ra.